Good morning and welcome to a very special Blabbing for Brick with myself and John. Our guest this morning is SgtTCS, Neil, and today is a very important day. And Neil, can you tell us why? Yes, sorry.
Just prepare myself. It's an important day because it's one of those things where you sort of I'll be like this probably most of the day with a big stupid grin on my face, because it's one of those days where you put some effort into something and you finally see that it's actually gained some attention and people are taking it seriously.
Yeah.
And it's about DontStreamandDrive, which was something that I started to use live stream platforms. I started to see how much fun you could have with a live stream platform. I also noticed how useful professionally that some of these live stream platforms could be once police forces around the country start to adopt them. So it had a number of aspects to it. But what became apparent quite quickly was the increasing trend that I was starting to notice I've been using Periscope for 12 months and I've seen this increase incredibly. As much as Periscope has grown in use, the use of people who are actually live streaming video from their phone whilst they drive. And that was something that just came to my attention. I drive a desk in the control room these days. But previously I'd spent 7 years on road policing. I was always passionate about road policing. A lot of my social media stuff on Twitter revolves around the Fatal Four. And I saw this and thought, this is dangerous. There's something we can do about this. And it was one of those things where I thought, this is something quite new. So there's potential for the live stream community itself, whilst it's still growing at a phenomenal rate, but whilst it's still growing, the live stream community itself can sort of make a statement and say, we're not prepared to accept this, we're not prepared to tolerate this. And so the Don't Stream and Drive Day idea sort of was planted in my head. I had a quick think about how I could do that and what I could do, and I just sort of set it up on a wing and a prayer by the seat of my pants and thought, okay, well, we'll run it as a day and see what happens. And remember sending an email to people at work saying, I don't really think it's going to go very far, but at least you're aware of it. And it sort of sat squandering for a while and not a great deal happening, but support from all my loyal people that follow me on Twitter. Yeah. And then suddenly it started to pick up. And that's why it's important, because it's such a danger on our roads, and there's an awful lot of people that are doing it, and there's an awful lot of people who have no idea that people are doing this and go, really? So that's what it's about. Right.
Okay. And your journey then started, as you say, building up people backing you, and you started a Thunderclap page.
Yep. I sat sort of thinking about all the different ways that I could sort of bring some attention to it, and using a Thunderclap. They can have a tendency in some people's eyes to be a little bit spammy, but only if you follow an awful lot of the people that have actually signed up, and then your timeline will be sort of hit at a specific time with a lot of information. But what it does is it helps to garner people's attention, and it gives one place where people can just do something. Because one of the things that when you're trying to organize something where you want a lot of people to participate in something at a certain date, well then, unless you've got their attention that day, they can forget, life gets in the way, things happen. And so the Thunderclap sign up just gives them the opportunity to support you, but they can click and forget. And if they're on social media today and they do stuff and put the hashtag out and they tweet and they do great things, well, then fantastic. But if life overtakes them and something happens and they've had to run off to see their granny or whatever, well, then it still gets the message out there and they can still support.
It only takes 10 seconds to sign up, and it's all set to go at 1 o'clock, isn't it? So,
yep.
Now, when you set this up, you had a target of 250 people joining you.
That's right. With the way that Thunderclap works is you can set it up for 100, you can set it up for 250, or you can set it up for 500. And I thought, well, I've got a Twitter following of people who are loyal and an awful lot of cops that would support it without question. So I thought 100 is I'm underselling myself. But I thought I don't want to push to 50 minutes. I will push for that. And it was surprising, actually, because if you think there's 15,000 followers on my Twitter account, but it took me several weeks to get enough people signed up to get past 250, and it felt like I was pestering all the time on my timeline. But that is indicative of the way that social media works, is that you can have a huge following, but the people that are actually really, really looking at what you have to say is considerably smaller. But then it just continued to grow, and so I started to. I've had some great support from the likes of Paul Cording, Oscar Romeo, 1268, who's in the room watching. I've had some great support from Chris Harris, who's RPFOU Sergeant. I've had some great across the country. Harry Tanguy in Devon and Cornwall, Joe Simon in Norfolk as well, who've really helped to sort of spread the message, and it's grown. And I think, I mean, can have a look now and see where it's at. It's about 400 and
429.
429. So it's moving on all the time. And
9, not 29.
469, sorry.
79.
Oh, 79.
It's all the time as we're sitting here. Anybody who's in the room has not signed, click on the fourth window and sign up now, just with your Twitter account, Facebook account, or your Tumblr account.
Thank you.
And it helps the message go out.
Yeah, but it started to grow, and then basically, it's one of those things that if you want to, as far as the police are concerned, if you want to try and organise something, I picked a great day to host Don't Stream and Drive Day, because it was only about 2 weeks ago where I thought, it's in the middle of half term. So my wife is not here. Oh, she is here today, and she's going to look after the kids, and I think they're all going out somewhere, because it's just like, I need the internet, don't you? But yeah, so one of the things that if you want to try and organise something like this, and I contacted the National Police Chiefs Council Road Policing Lead, which is the Chief Constable at Gloucestershire, Suzette Davenport, and pitched this to her and said, I've got this idea, I want to do something with it on social media. I'm just letting you know that this is what I'm doing, and what do you think? Is there anything you can do? And they were immediately in agreement that it had merit and it was a good idea. But then that was about it.
Yeah.
And that was how I wanted it. I said, leave it, let's leave it with me. Let's see what happens and see what I can do with it. So it's an oddity then, in that if I was wanting to sort of write to Sussex Police and say, or Surrey Police, I think Surrey were the first force to sign up, who I've got a good relationship with. Yeah. But if I were to write to them and say, I'm organising this awareness day, and could you please get involved? And here's a blog with some information. It would be much harder to get their support. But one of the things that you've built this reputation, and people start to know you on social media, and so it's sort of bypassed, not through any intent to sort of stir things up and create friction in places that a little bit of friction has been caused, but simply because if you've got if you think about the National Crime Agency, which is a good example because that ties into Surrey as well. The ex-Chief Constable of Surrey is a lady called Lynn Owens, and she's now the Director General of the National Crime Agency. I've met her once, fabulous lady, very passionate about using social media in policing and into the background that she's gone into now. And I just contacted her through Twitter and said, I've got this campaign going, do you know? I spoke to one of her communication team a couple of weeks ago in Coventry at a meeting, a panel that I sit on, and he said, tend to get things done when you go straight to the person at the top when you know them. Yeah. And that's the unique nature that I've got within Twitter at the moment, is that I've got a line of communication and an ability to have a conversation with the Chief Constable from another force, where I might not speak to the Chief Constable in my force for weeks on end.
Right.
But that means that I can get action quicker in a way that is unusual and not the traditional route that forces are used to operating within.
That's true. Well, there's increasing use of social media by the UK police force, isn't there?
Oh, definitely. And we have since I started. I mean, the fact that I'm actually showing my face and talking to you as Neil, I've nearly got to the point where I'm giving my surname, but not quite there yet. And sort of a very slow step out of complete anonymity. But when I first started on social media, the safest and best place to be for a cop that was tweeting was anonymous, which was why I was the custody sergeant. That's how I started, because I worked in custody and I gave anecdotes of things about that were going on in custody. But we've grown massively over the years, and you know, I have two sort of aspects on the way that the police in the UK are using social media at the moment. I think we've made huge steps. I think we're doing brilliantly with it. But then the other argument says, but we're still not doing good enough. There's still so much more that we can do. But I think that's a positive. That's a good thing.
And platforms like Blab help with that, don't they? Because you can be face to face. You can talk to people. I mean, you've appeared on quite a few shows over over the last month or two.
Yeah, I think it's because it gets you're tapping into a different audience, and you're getting your face known, and people are getting to know you and see you. And Blab has been great for that. And I've really sort of stood on the shoulders in regard to my Blab use. I've stood on the shoulders of the cops from California who do the Cops on Blab and what's the other? Talk with the Cops, who host their Blabs in California. Sorry if I keep looking that way. All my family are just sort of departing.
Okay.
I've stood on their shoulders because they really set something going with Blab, and I thought we can do something with that. We can mirror that. We can, and that's how Offbeat Cops came about, and that's been really good because we've had some great people on there talking. Paul Cording, Oscar Romeo. Bye. See you later. Oscar Romeo 1268 on Twitter is a sergeant in North Yorkshire on the road policing team, and he brought a friend along who had lost their daughter in a road traffic accident. We talked about the dangers of drink drive, and it was one of those moments where you just sit there and you just can't speak. It is very difficult to sort of, while this person is passionately and so honestly speaking about such an awful loss. And, so really honoured to have people who come on and spoke to us about stuff like that. Then we've had the outgoing president of the Superintendents Association, Irene Curtis, who's a great social media user, who came on and talked about her career and some things that are passionate to her. And then again, it's this thing with social media, and that you can tap into people and get things done that just wouldn't happen through the traditional routes. Next week, the next Offbeat Cops Blab, myself and Constable Chaos are interviewing the Deputy Chief Constable of Lancashire Police, who's the National Lead for Wellbeing.
Right. Okay.
And you think, how bizarre is that? And it's one of the strange, a little anecdote really. One of the things that I sort of did years ago, I was on a training day with all the custody sergeants at headquarters, and they were sat there talking about mental health and Section 1360 detentions that we do under the Mental Health Act. And this topic came up and was discussing, and then I sat there and I said, well, actually, last night I was talking to the Deputy Chief Constable of Leicestershire about that, and and he says that this, and the whole room went silent, and I stopped, and they were all looking at me and went, well, I was.
True. Yeah. I mean, that's it. Yeah. You've got a network within a network, haven't you? One that's actually online.
Absolutely.
As you've illustrated so far, that can be more powerful than a telephone.
It can be incredibly powerful, and when you've built up a relationship with a senior officer, which is a great thing to be able to do on social media, but then when you've got a friend who's at the top of the business and you want something doing, you don't go to somebody that you don't know and say, can you ask him? You go to your friend, don't you? And whilst I've not met many of them, the fact that I've got this relationship with them online has meant that I've gone to them. And so the support has sort of gone to the top and come down, as opposed to gone to the bottom and worked its way up. So it's doing everything in reverse, I suppose. But it's worked, and to a degree. We've got, I think 12 forces have signed up across the country. There's an awful lot of individual officers. There's an awful lot of more local accounts, but force main corporate accounts, which is quite a difficult area to get into. Yeah. 12 have signed up, but yesterday Cambridgeshire Police were tweeting out saying that they were in support of the day, and Greater Manchester Police, who have got an enormous Twitter following and have got a great brand reputation on Twitter, I've been tweeting out this morning with images and saying they support DontStreamandDrive, and the consequences can be fatal and stuff. So, yeah, there's a lot of support, even if they're not all signed up to the Thunderclap. So,
well, that means that you've gone from an idea to executing that idea, to setting up the Thunderclap page, getting. Let's check the latest stats. I'll just refresh the page. The tweets that go out at 1 o'clock today will reach 2.3 million people. Wow. And that's irrespective of anybody acting.
Oh, I've lost you. Is that me or is it you? This is difficult because I won't know now because I'm still here. I can see John moving around. Can't hear you, John.
Independently, and that's the.
Oh, maybe he's muted his microphone because he's on the phone. Stephen's gone. I'm still here, so hopefully it's not me because I can see John. Anybody drop a line in the text just to say that you can see me and can still hear me? Oh, excellent. So you can still hear me. So we'll wait for Stephen to come back. And oh, there's Stephen Silks dropped in.
Hey, dude.
Hi. And I can hear you. So that means that it's definitely working. So I don't know.
Fine. Just can't find the hosts.
So there we go. So I've forgotten where we were at now. We were talking about we were talking about the the Thunderclap reach, which Stephen has said had hit 2.3 million.
Yeah.
Now that's quite a remarkable thing, because obviously as some of the corporate force accounts have jumped in, well then that can add quite a considerable amount of people to it with relatively small numbers. And there's a certain amount of discussions that have been had about the fact that I have attained a degree of influence, and I'm influencing the behavior of forces, and I'm influencing the behavior of organizations. I mean, I can probably, now it's Don't Stream and Drive Day, I can probably drop this in, because it's been quite surprising who has supported and come back to me quite quickly, and where I've had no reply at all. And this is indicative really of the relationship that I've got with senior officers around the country through social media, where I've managed to get something done like that. But when I've gone down the traditional route with other organizations such as the AA and the RAC, who are clearly sort of passionate about road safety as well, and neither of those two huge motoring organizations have responded to me.
That's interesting. And
not even a reply saying, it's not our bag.
What I liked about it is the way you've sort of created a community of people who are passionate about this issue, and you know, you've done it with Blab and some Twitter, and you know, there's all sorts of additional tools out there that you could have used, but you've done so well. I don't quite know what the there's a thing on the Thunderclap which says that you have an added reach of 25,806. Not quite sure what that means, but
let me have a look at the page and just.
But we should be able to influence the AA and the RAC online.
It was one of those things where I was sort of torn, because it's very hard to try and get somebody's attention to do something when you sort of contact.
Really, that's a bit about that one. I mean, if you have issues with big organisations, there's nothing like a good, well-crafted tweet to say, "Oi."
Yes, yeah, it can have that impact.
You know, all of them have got you've got a combination of customer service and social media these days, and you should be able to, or we should be able to influence.
Yeah, well, I felt that it was worthwhile of treading a very sort of gentle path, and not coming at people as a sort of, you must sign up because you're embarrassed into doing it, or, you know, And so I understand that, but because I've gone down the traditional route, I've come across the traditional barriers that I've not come across when I've been dealing with forces. And then I've got officers around the country who have been targeting their local organisations as well. So, example, Chris Harris in Norfolk has been challenging all the people in East Anglia. So we've got Norfolk Fire and Rescue, Suffolk Fire and Rescue, Norfolk Police, Suffolk Police, East Anglia Air Ambulance, East of England Ambulance. Have all sort of been contacted by him because he's got a link into them, and then they've all signed up, which is just this incredible sort of networking that's going on. But it grew and it grew, and Stephen's back. Welcome, Stephen.
Hi, Stephen.
It just continued to grow, and as it got nearer and nearer to the day, and I got into over 1 million social media reach with the Thunderclap, and I thought, am I being overly optimistic to try and expect this to get to beyond 2 million and to get to perhaps 500 signups, which is twice what I expected? And we've not quite at 500 signups. We've still got a couple of hours. It might get there, it might not, but it's one of those things. The numbers are numbers, and they don't really mean a great deal. But it's just nice to see that you're getting that huge support, and that it's going to hit so many people.
It's up to 482 now.
No, so it's still moving.
What about the police and crime commissioners? Have they shown any interest?
I don't think that there's. The difficult thing that I've got with Thunderclap is what I've done is I've run this whole thing as a completely voluntary standalone campaign, and so I haven't put any money into it at all, and I haven't taken any money out of it. Well, no, tell a lie, because I had to drive to Berkshire and do stuff with Radio 4. And I didn't take any expenses for that. So I put some money into it, I suppose, in order to do that. But one of the things with Thunderclap is that unless you subscribe to their website and go for all their fancy features, well, then you cannot see who's signed up once they drop off the list. So you can only see the most recent signups. So there might be PCCs or their offices that have signed up that I've missed. And then, so I could be doing them a disservice by saying none have supported it. But I'm certainly not aware of any that have contacted me via Twitter or sent out the tweet that says I've just supported the Thunderclap that I've seen and gone, oh, crikey, that's the office of the XYZ Police and Crime Commissioner. Yeah. I have got a contact at the MOPAC office, but a friend who I trust a great deal about it all said it might be difficult across the country with the police and crime commissioners because we're coming up to elections, PERDA and all those sort of things, and they're far more busy with that kind of thing than
they're trying to kick my one out. So
worrying about this poxy sergeant from some force who wants people to be safe on the roads.
Right.
Apologies, guys, for me disappearing and answering the phone, but unfortunately my dad's in hospital, and that was the hospital on to call about him. So my apologies, but it just coincided with you disappearing as well, Steve.
I know, and thank you for stepping Stephen again.
But Stephen Silk rode into the rescue, didn't you, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm not going to say what happened on live air or my reaction to it. Right, okay. Can we go back to?
I'll jump out again and come back if necessary. Cheers.
Okay, cheers, Steve. Let's come back to the central point, and I'm going to ask a stupid question here because those of us with common sense wouldn't stream and drive, but why shouldn't we stream and drive?
Right. Why shouldn't we stream and drive? It's one of the things that I've focused on with the whole campaign, and part of that was also to make it very easily palatable for police forces to show support to it, was the fact that the nuts and bolts of what Don't Stream and Drive centre around three things, and that's mobile phones, drivers, and cars.
Yeah. They
do not go together, and there are a whole load of existing campaigns about don't text and drive, don't use your phone while you drive, and if you're using a hands-free kit, keep your calls short and concise, and all these sort of things. So I said, there's nothing new there. There's nothing new in the arena, except the actual use that the phone is being put to.
Right.
And so basically, as a demonstration, as I look into the camera for the Blab now, if I'm looking straight ahead and that's down the road,
yeah,
my phone is in my hand. Right. Or it's in a cradle over here. Okay, so I'll say it's in a cradle over here, and already you can see that I'm looking away from the screen. I'm not looking. I should be looking down the road and looking in my mirrors and looking behind me and all the rest of it. But I'm going. Yeah. Yeah. Morning, everybody. And so there's a great video that came out of Ireland. That the timing of it was superb that it came out, because they've got two videos. One is about a whole bunch of kids in a car and they're all laughing and joking and having a great time. And then it shows somebody on the golf course and they're taking a shot, and they said, you wouldn't disturb them while they take this shot. Do you know it's like about being silent when somebody's taking a golf shot? Everybody goes really quiet. And then the shot's taken. But while somebody's driving, there can be a whole load of kids in the car and they're all going, oh, it's great, and look, and take a selfie. And you think, why would you distract the driver while you're in this can driving down the road? So that was one thing. But the other one was the fact that it says, what are you afraid of missing? And it does a 2-second timer across the screen like this.
Okay.
And then in that 2 seconds, it changes around. And there's a hazard that's appeared in front of them while they've looked away because there's a text message arrived or whatever. And that's the danger, is the fact that people are taking their eyes off the road for a considerable amount of time. And for some that I've watched over the months in the lead up to today, are spending more time looking at their phone than they are at the road ahead. And then that's a complete reverse of where you should be.
Yeah. And
anything can happen in that time. And it happens to somebody else, or it never happens to you, it happens to somebody else. And that's why you shouldn't be streaming and driving, because it distracts your attention. It takes your eyes and your attention away from where it's supposed to be. And it's an avoidable distraction, because somebody will say, well, you're driving down the road and you need to put your heated rear windscreen on, so you have to take your eyes off the road and just look at the switch and press the button.
Yeah.
It's an unavoidable distraction, because you need to have that window behind you clear so you can see.
Yes.
So it's acceptable, obviously, that you've got to be able to take your eyes off or adjust the heating controls, because your front windscreen is steaming up, so you want the air going up on the windscreen and not around your feet. They're unavoidable distractions. You have to take your eyes off the road to do that. But because it's such a complex operation when you're driving, hand, eye, foot coordination and gears, steering, the whole thing, there are a whole lot of distractions in the car that don't need to be there, and streaming is one of them. And is obvious from my experience of watching, is becoming increasingly popular and increasingly dangerous for the amount of time people are actually not looking, which is utterly scary, really, really scary.
Yeah, it is, because the thing about social media, about streaming, is that it involves you.
Absolutely. It's an interactive function. And whereas, one of the things, I'll talk about Periscope first of all, because Periscope is huge. It's just past its first birthday, and it's got this amazing following of people that are using it. And that has the interactive ability that, much like the sidebar in Blab here, is that people can send messages to you, and they appear on the screen right in front of you. So you can read those comments. People can ask you where you are, where you're going, what's the weather like, what do you do for a job, or whatever it happens to be. And believe me, I've seen some conversations that just can't be repeated. They're awful. But it gives that interactive function. So then you're not just looking at the phone to see what the phone is actually relaying live. Yeah. You're actually reading the comments, and then you've got this interactive function. Yeah. But other platforms, just as bad, that I hadn't even thought of, and I'm only playing with it at the moment and getting to grips with Snapchat. But again, that is something that people are using to post to their timeline within Snapchat. They post video that doesn't go out live like live streaming, but it goes onto their what's called My Story if they choose to. Mm-hmm. And they have to hold the phone and actually press the button on the screen while they record. Yeah. So now you're looking at the camera because you've only got this small snapshot to be able to do something. So it's like drive, and then grab the phone and go, hold the button down, and then come down. And then while they've got the phone down, if they post it straight away, they've got to tap buttons to where they want to post it to. So it's the whole interactive function is increases the risks exponentially, massively more so from those people who would come to me and say, well, is it not just like a dash cam? And you think, oh.
And I guess you've got Facebook Live arriving on the picture now.
Absolutely. Facebook Live is another one. And I mean, they're all going in this direction. 2016 is the year of live stream video. It's been lauded across the social media community as being the big year for live stream video. And Facebook have recently had, I think, Mark, what's his name?
Zuckerberg. The boss.
Yeah, was doing a big debrief about it only the other day.
Yeah.
That was going out talking about Facebook Live and the video feature that they've got and how it's going to use and what it's going to work. And one of those things that Periscope has that I'm sure a lot of people do, where you can do a private broadcast just to a select number of people because you might not want to show, you might not want the world to see your children playing in the paddling pool in the Black Garden. Yeah. You want to just share that with your family. But most people, I would imagine, on Periscope are public because they want people to see what they're sharing.
Indeed.
Facebook accounts are generally, in most cases, locked down. So then it will only be the people that you're friends with that will be able to see that footage, unless you're doing something on a page or whatever. But again, it's just another avenue where people can and in some regards, they can involve in that live streaming behavior, but it might be hidden from our view unless somebody sees it that's a friend with this person and goes and does the right thing. So. Yeah.
So during your effective campaign, you've come across people actually streaming and driving in the wrong situations. Well, sorry, what I mean is you found more and more people are doing it than you thought.
It's definitely increasing. There are people who would say, oh, well, what are the statistics? Well, give me some facts and figures, give me the hard evidence. And to be honest, I can't give that sort of information at the moment because I'm not tackling it in that way. What I'm tackling it in a way is just identifying somebody that's doing it and then trying to challenge them about that behavior and try and steer them to a safer, educate them to a degree and steer them to a safer understanding of the risks. But yeah, I've seen some incredible footage of what people are prepared to do and think is acceptable. Yeah. It really is quite horrifying.
So that's more fuel for the campaign. Just to the side, when you have approached people and said you shouldn't, this is not common sense, this is silly, what sort of reactions have you had?
This is something that's quite common now. 3 camps really. Those that completely ignore you. You don't, because one of the things, and I said this on 5 Live at the weekend. Was it only last Sunday? I think it was only last Sunday. But that was a real experience. To go live on radio was something I've never done before and a bit scary, but it was good fun. And I said to them that there are the people that completely ignore you. But what I don't do is I won't send a message across Periscope to somebody who is driving.
Right.
Because I don't want them to read my comment, and it's my comment they read while they've got their eyes off the road that leads to the subsequent collision. So I have to just sit there and watch and see what they're doing, which is almost contrary to everything I'm saying about the pledge for Don't Stream and Drive. Well, it's not almost, it's completely contrary to the pledge of Don't Stream and Drive, which is I'll never watch anybody who is. But I took my pledge this morning on, I think I did it on Snapchat this morning at work, and just sort of said there is a caveat to this in the fact that I will watch broadcasts in order to identify people who are driving, point out the dangers, and challenge them about the consequences of it. Yes, so they.
So that's the first camp. They'll ignore you.
Yeah, the first ignore you. Then what you often find is that the way that I contact them is you'll often find is that the Twitter name on Snapchat, the Twitter name on Periscope matches the Twitter name on Twitter. The username, should say username. So a couple of checks just to make sure it's definitely the same person. The bios are pretty much the same. The photograph is the same thing. Okay, I'm happy it's the same person. And then I send them a tweet on Twitter and say, what do you think? And that then engenders two responses. One is honest and truthful, which is, you know what, you're absolutely right. I hadn't even thought about that. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. And that's that. And they're remorseful for it and accept it and say, you know, I mean, there's a chap who I spoke to on Periscope and I called him out. He was in the UK. I challenged him a number of times. He carried on. And finally, my message got to him. And he often comes into my Periscopes now and says hello and says he's a reformed scoper and he doesn't do it anymore. And you think, bingo, result, you know. And one of the things I've said is the campaign is a complete success now because I've stopped one, you know, I've stopped more than one. But the minute that I've influenced somebody's behavior, well, then, as far as I'm concerned, it was a success. So you get those people. And then the other people, which only recently became a new hashtag that Ryan Miller from Parent Dome on Twitter started to use, which was hashtag ICDWIW, which is I can do what I want.
Oh, right, okay.
And that was because an awful lot of people will come back to you and say, what's it got to do with you? Mind your own business. Do what I like. And the real the great one that I actually broadcast on Periscope, and it's on Catch as well if people want to go and find it. I'll share it later on again today. There's a lady in America driving, and she was talking about online reputation and being positive and being a good role model. And all the time she was driving down the road, she was holding the phone in one hand and she'd got lovely long hair. So with her other hand, all she was doing every time she looked down at the phone, her hair came across her. So she was pulling her hair out of her face. And you think, hang on, which one's on the steering wheel?
Indeed.
None of them. So she's doing that knee steer. And the sad reaction to it was that she eventually pulled into a petrol station and came to a complete stop. And she was still looking at the camera and talking. And at that point, I pushed the hashtag into her broadcast. Nothing else, just the hashtag. Okay. And she looked down like this and she went, blocked me instantly. And as soon as I was blocked, said, I can do what I want.
All right.
And you think, you've got to get, those are the people that you've got to get through to because they're in denial of the actual risks. Because if you said to her, would you go and drink, 2 bottles of wine and then drive? She said, no, don't be stupid. That's dangerous.
Yeah. But it's a gradual process, isn't it? I mean, we had the introduction of breathalyzers in the UK, and then over the years, people took to the Don't Drink and Drive campaign. It is a gradual thing. It's something you started. It's got to go on.
I definitely think so. I mean, Drink Drive and the breathalyzers came into the UK in 1967 and 1968, which was when I was born. And you think, we're still tackling Drink Drive now, and it's still prevalent. It's not gone away. But I think it's less acceptable than it ever was.
Indeed, yeah.
The newer risk that came in was that drugs started to come into play. And we're only now starting to see how drugs and driving are far more easily detectable now with the new screening kits that we've got. So now we're going to start seeing how big a problem drug driving really is. Because it's in prior to this, unless somebody actually showed a degree of impairment, it was very difficult to sort of even consider bringing them in, let alone testing them for it. And I think this will go the same way. I mean, BBC 5 Live opened their article with me on Sunday, saying that I was basically saying that the government and chief constables needed to catch up because they were behind the curve with capturing data from people's phones. I allowed them that little bit of latitude, I suppose, albeit I had no choice in it, but I didn't sort of vehemently disagree to it. Because they said, if we just come and say you're having an awareness day, well, then we can say an awareness day about anything. So we need a hook. So that's what they used. But ultimately, it's not about criticising the government, and it's not about criticising chief constables for being behind the curve. It's about saying that this is a new way that people are likely to be doing something other than driving while they're at the car. And if that's the case, it's an area that we look at now, but it's an area that we're going to have to increasingly look at more closely in order to detect potential offences.
Indeed, I mean, it's something that when you joined us on Blabbing for Britain earlier in the year, at the start of your campaign, that Jon and I resonated with us straight away. Don't stream and drive is common sense.
Absolutely.
It's pushing the message out there and making people understand why it's a problem. And it's not necessarily that if you don't stream and drive, then the people around you shouldn't stream and drive either. So not a question of reporting people, but as you've been doing, giving people a gentle nudge and saying, think about this.
Absolutely.
You know.
I mean, I've been at this now for, I think I set everything going fully about 2 months ago, but I was tickling it beforehand. So if we said sort of 8 to 10 weeks or so that I've been pushing this, and I've called out dozens of people, and they're all over the world, Australia, North America, in the UK, they're all over the world. And it's sort of about education, but out of all those people, only 3, because in other countries I can't do anything about it really, other than challenge them. But in the UK, there are only 3 occasions where I've looked and thought, I'm not calling this person out. I'm going straight to the local force and telling them.
All right.
And at least one of those is I've got positive feedback on the fact that they're looking at going for this driver and trying to do something with it. So fingers crossed that will.
That's something that as a serving police officer you can take action.
Yes,
and inform people.
Even if it's not in my area, it's something that I can sort of notify to the force involved and say, you need to be aware of this and have a look at it. And then it's up to them what they decide to do. But I can present them with the evidence. So,
I'm conscious that time today will be tight because you'll be doing the rounds. So, but just two things, and then we'll stop recording. One, where's your journey taken you to in the last 10 weeks? Who have you met and enjoyed meeting? And
it's the biggest thing that I've done with moving around is the work that I've done with the BBC. And the BBC, I have again, it's one of these social media things in that my initial contact, first time ever with the BBC, was a few years back when the police all gathered in London and marched through the streets of London to go on about the cuts and circumstances that were going on in policing at the time, that the Police Federation under Paul McKeever organised. And Radio 4 contacted me and asked me if I would go and speak to them, and I had a huge panic because I'd never had any such contact before, and I was still completely anonymous. But I sought some advice, and Paul McKeever, God bless him, gave me some great advice and support, and I went and did it. So I started to build up an online relationship with the likes of Radio 4, with the likes of, bizarrely, things like Corrie Caulfield, who's one of the anchors.
Right. Yeah.
Listen to Radio 4. She and I have followed one another on Twitter for ages. We chat every now and again. Whenever I send a message, she always replies to me. Martha Carney, who does the Watto program at 1 o'clock, has a good relationship with me. So you build up this relationship. And so when, over the last few weeks, what's happened is that Radio 4 reached out to me and said, we'd like to talk to you about this. And Chris Vallance at Radio 4, the reporter there, was superb and had a real... He said, I'm thinking big with this. He said, I don't just want to talk about it. He said, let's do something. So he contacted TRL in Berkshire, which is Transport Research Laboratories. And they agreed. And so we went down and they sat me in a full-size car in a room with screens all the way around it. And we went through the process of doing a check drive and how I managed with the distractions, and then went through the same drive, but then I... simulated streaming and driving as well. So we put my phone on the windscreen and tapped record, and then I started interacting as I've seen other drivers interacting. And the results were not a surprise to me, but it certainly reinforced everything that Don't Stream and Drive is about. So that was great fun. I went down to Berkshire, and Professor Nick Reed at TRL was fabulous and a great support. So that was part of my journey. Then on Sunday, I had a very early start and had to drive up to Salford and went to Media City and went live on BBC 5 Live, which was again is another remarkable sort of experience. And I've got another lined up for Monday at the moment. If it all comes off, it's looking well. I should be on BBC Stoke, who've contacted me, and I should be on BBC Stoke on Monday morning. Again, quite early, I think sometime after 7 o'clock. But they were going to talk to me this morning, but they realised I was going to bed and that I'd be busy. So they said, "Tell you what, we'll push it back and we can talk post-event." Which will be great. So there's a lot of interest, and it's almost one of those things where I think I've set off on this journey, and I've been to these places and talked to people and met people that I've not met previously. But I almost get the feeling that there's more for this to come yet. I think there'll be more interest in this, particularly after today. So we'll see what happens after today. Yeah,
I'm sure it's definitely the start of something. The work you've put in the past 10 weeks and the help from your colleagues will drive this forward. Yeah, it's not just, we're not just talking UK, are we?
No, not at all. It is completely global, and the all I've done to find people is to just put a search parameter into Twitter that includes Periscope and driving, and some you'll get that just says, "I'm on Periscope and it's driving me mad. It's not working." You think, well, they're just sat in the lounge, which is fine, but there's so many there, and it is global. Which is, so it's got an international sort of aspect to it. And I mean, there's even television interest as well, which hasn't come to fruition yet, but there has been some television interest from BBC 2, I think it is, Victoria, Derbyshire.
Oh, Victoria, Derbyshire, yes, ex-Radio 5.
Yes. So, but that's not sort of developed any further yet. But the interest was there, so there's potential for that to be rekindled, I guess. So, face for radio, Paul. So,
we've got a chat down the side.
Fine. You say I've got a face for radio, and when I walked, just as I was going through the door into the studio at Radio 5, the lady said, "Oh, there is a webcam in the corner. Is that okay?" Yeah, it's a good job I don't mind showing my face.
The thing about social media is that it gets the word out, and you can have fun doing it, can't you? I mean,
I've definitely had a lot of fun. It's been a very, very busy couple of months. I have lived and breathed it away from work and in between doing what I do for a proper job. There's bits where I've been at work as well, but I've lived and breathed it for 2 months, and it has, I mean, I'm still smiling now, but it has been a great deal of fun, and there's been a lot of interaction with some fabulous people, and some great support that just has left me speechless. Sometimes I think, crikey.
Well, you've taken an idea, you've built a campaign, you've got everybody on board, and it's getting more and more momentum as time goes on. And hopefully our show today has played some part in that.
Thank you for having me.
Before I switch the recording side of this off, we'd like to put out a message to everybody who sees the video about the campaign.
Oh, me? Sorry, I thought, did you say we? Oh, sorry, I was expecting something to jump up on the floor thinking, like, oh, what have they done? What would I like to, before it finishes?
Set of slides, actually.
Yes, in a carousel.
Yeah. But they won't show on the recording, so that's the
thing. What would be my key message? My key message would be just to sort of say, essentially, the hashtag #DontStreamandDrive. Think about the consequences. People that are live streaming and driving at the moment, I'm sure, are 99.9% of the time rational, sensible, caring people, and they're just not immediately thinking about the consequences. And don't live streaming and driving and using a phone in your hand, whilst you've got it in your hand, you're likely to be impaired more than you were if you were over the drink drive limit. And I think that would horrify some people who are quite passionate about drink driving, but would quite happily hold their phone in their hand and do something. So it would just be, think about the consequences. I've tried to focus on common sense. Never mind whether you commit an offence and whether it's in a cradle and you're not touching the phone, and so it's not an offence. It might be a more serious offence, but just think, is that sensible? is it wise? Is it the smart thing to do? The answer's got to be no. Put the phone down, concentrate on your driving, stream when you get there. So yeah, that would be a message. Don't stream and drive. Just don't.
Okay. From the BFB, Don't Stream and Drive special, this is goodbye, and thank you for watching us. And we'll catch you, John and I will catch you next week, and we look forward to chatting with Neil again soon, and we want the campaign to go forward. So thank you for now, and
for almost 12 months now. And as I got to see the use of it and how fun it could be, but also some of the ways that it could be used within the policing environment, I've started to become more avid user of it. And then I've started to notice that there were people using it while they were driving. And having spent 7 years on road policing, it became quite a niggle to me, really. It became a bit of annoyance, a thorn in my side, that I could see people doing this and the obvious dangers that came with it. And so I thought, well, what can I, if I'm annoyed about it and I think it's dangerous and it's not safe, what can I do about it? So I thought, well, the best thing I could do is try and educate people and help people understand the dangers and the consequences of it. And so set a day up, just plucked a date out of the air, and thought, right, let's give it a run and see what happens.
Right. Now, one essential element in your strategy was Thunderclap.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can you explain a bit about how that works and how you used it?
Yeah, Thunderclap was something that came to me after I'd had the sort of the basic bones of the campaign going for a couple of weeks, and thought, oh, why don't I do one of those? Thunderclap basically is an app that runs behind your Twitter account. You can give your Twitter account access, and then when you commit and pledge to support a specific campaign through Thunderclap, it will send a tweet automatically on your behalf at the same time that it sends all the others out for everybody else that's signed up. So you get a whole pile of tweets going out at the same time with the key message, which creates a lot of noise, hence the Thunderclap. Right. And that's been good fun. It was a good idea, and the response was overwhelming.
Well, your initial target was 250 people, wasn't it? But you reached a few more than that.
Yeah. I thought, well, I'll give it a run for 250. I could have 100, 250, or 500. And if you don't reach target, well, then it won't go. Right. And so, unless you pay. And the whole thing has been done with my own sort of time and expense and what have you. So I thought, I'm not putting money into something that I want this to run and be successful in its own right. So I plucked for 250 and thought, we can do that. And I pushed and pushed and pushed and got it out on Twitter and got it shared, and eventually got to 250 and thought, that's it, that's amazing. We can sit back and relax now. But there's been a real enthusiasm for it, and it has continued and continued and continued, and it became to the point where we finished today, where it was just over 500 signups and just short of 2.5 million people on the social media reach, which was just amazing.
Totally agree. From a standing start to reach those numbers, and I mean, all the tweets went and Facebook posts went out at 1 o'clock today, didn't they? So 2.5 hours ago, and you had a stream. A continuous stream of people.
It was very difficult to keep up with it at that point. There were so many things going out. Plus, people were retweeting and quoting and sharing, and so there was far more content in the column than I expected. It was very difficult to keep track of.
So, Thunderclap is a great resource if you have a cause to promote. Now, you had this initial idea of Don't Stream and Drive. And I suppose the first basic question that people are going to say is, well, why? Why shouldn't I stream and drive?
Because ultimately, when you sit behind the wheel of a car and you drive a car, it's a very complex and dynamic environment for you to be operating in. It's a complex blend of hand, eye, foot coordinations while you're dealing with the steering, you're dealing with visual traffic around you. You're thinking about your peripheral vision, what's happening to the side of you here, what's happening behind you in the mirror, what are you doing, Is it an automatic car? Is it a manual car? Have you clutch and gearbox and indicators and steering and windscreen wipers and heating controls and all those things that we do almost autonomously within the car environment most of the time? But that's quite a complex and comprehensive operation all by itself, and deserves your full attention. And every motorist has a duty of care to themselves and to every other road user when they go out onto the roads. And so live streaming video is putting an avoidable distraction into that mix.
Right.
And it's like juggling, I suppose. You can say, well, I can confidently juggle 3 balls, and I can juggle 3 balls all day long and never drop one because I'm really skilled and I'm really practiced at it. And then somebody comes in from left field and says, right, try 4, and throws one in there. Now you're under pressure. And that under pressure thing means that potentially you could drop one of the balls. And so when you add these avoidable distractions into the driving arena, things can go wrong.
Yeah, and with the increase in live streaming this year, it's a potential problem, isn't it? That people need to start thinking about now.
Definitely. That was one of the things that I thought about. It was the fact that 2016 is being lauded across the whole social media community as being the year of live stream, and Periscope is a year old and has grown and grown and grown. There are other platforms that have come into play. Snapchat is another that is increasingly growing and uses a degree of live stream, if you like. But then we've got Facebook Live has just appeared, and so there are a whole number of platforms where this is going to become more and more popular, and increased data connection speeds and availability have meant that people can stream from places where previously they might not even have had a phone signal. So now it's become far more it's become far easier for people to actually participate with live streaming from all sorts of locations.
Right. Now, we were talking earlier, and you mentioned that because of social media, you were able to leverage contact that you made socially with other police forces.
It has been a very unconventional campaign, if you like, because obviously when you work within an organisation and there are national campaigns around the UK, and I have no doubt across North America and other European countries as well, where they'll have a national campaign about something. TISPOL, the European-wide road policing organisation, regularly organise European-wide road safety events that run for a week while they're looking at the fatal fall, or they're specifically looking at seatbelts or things like this. And so, but what's happened is that I've got this. These things will be organised and planned in advance, and there'll be corporate communication teams looking at it and looking at strategy and what are we going to put in place, and what are the measures that we're expecting to come back, and how will we know if it's been a success, and these things. And I've basically come at it from a completely different angle, which is let's just throw it out there, try and make it as visible as possible. And then I've utilised the contacts that I've got around the country that I've built up through social media to that has enabled me to instigate action that I may not have got had I approached them through the traditional, right, I'm going to write to Sussex Police with a letter and say, I'm doing this on this day and it would be really great if you could support me. I may get a response, I may not get a response, whereas I've gone through social media and copying the Chief Constable that I've got a reasonable social media rapport with, who says, I think it's a fabulous idea, at which point it pricks up the ears of the corporate team, and then things have happened. So I've come from the top down in many regards, but that's the power of social media, and the fact that you can you become an influencer and you build up relationships with people. And as we said earlier, if you want to get a company to do something, why would you go in at the bottom level and say, I want your help, where it's got to get through this whole tier of process when your best friend is the chief exec?
Indeed.
You just go to the chief, you just go to your friend and say, can you help me with this?
Right.
And so, that's how it's sort of come together. And it's been very successful.
Yeah, indeed. And it's been going on all day, and the traffic on Twitter has been, don't stream and drive. And you've had help from we talked social media. You've been using Twitter and Periscope and Blab because you've appeared on Blabbing for Britain, and you've got your own show on Blab as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you've also had help from traditional media, radio.
Yeah, we have. I've had contact with BBC Radio 4 a number of years ago when the police in the UK all centred in London and marched with regard to some of the cuts that the organisation was facing. And I had contact with Radio 4 at that point. And that contact has remained very loosely linked, but it has been there ever since. And when this campaign got going quite early on, I had contact from a journalist at the BBC Radio 4 who wanted to talk to me about it. That led to a trip to Berkshire, which is near London, where I went to a company called TRL. They're called Transport Research Laboratories, is what it stands for. And they have a full-size driving simulator with screens all around. And it's on a sort of piston system. The wheels of the car are on like a piston system. So not like a flight simulator that hydraulics and moves all over, but it moved just enough to create the sensation of movement when you're moving from lane to lane, or when you brake, or when you accelerate. It's quite an odd feeling. But I went down there and met the reporter down there, and we did some filming and we did some recording. And that led to an article on BBC Radio 4 on the BBC PM programme. And then a couple of days later, that led to the BBC website hosting a magazine article about the dangers of streaming and driving with a little bit of footage. I'll get the link to that because I know I've still got the window open for that. So there it is. I'll just copy that and I'll paste that into the bar there.
Yeah.
There it is. That's the BBC News article. So they were great. They were really helpful, really supportive of it. And so that was good. That led to contact from a second national radio station, another BBC station, but this was BBC 5 Live. And I went to see them on Sunday, and I was on their breakfast show for about 10 minutes on Sunday, just gone, again, talking about it. And all being well, I'll be on BBC Radio Stoke, which is a more local station, by telephone on Monday morning on their station.
Yeah, because of course this is a full day for Don't Stream and Drive, but it's an ongoing campaign.
Well, it will continue. There's absolutely no doubt about it, because I think the amount of people that I'm seeing streaming and driving is increasing all the time. Every time I go into my Twitter feed and start searching for it, the numbers of tweets that are going out with people that are actually driving is on the increase. Now, that's probably a natural consequence of the fact that Periscope is also increasing in users and size all the time. But it just goes to show that that problem is still there, and it's going to continue to be there. There's the article there. Fantastic. That's a really, really interesting day. And the DigiCar at TRL was exceptionally good fun. But what it does is we ran a check drive as a benchmark test. So I ran a test on a stretch of motorway, and I just drove with no distractions whatsoever. And they assessed me for maintaining speed, my reaction times, my ability to keep within the position in the lane, and then also later my ability in bends to see how I stayed within the lane. Then the second drive, you can just see in the picture. You can just see in the picture there that there is a mount on the windscreen in the center of the car that's got my phone in it. And what I did then was we set off driving with exactly the same conditions, the same set of circumstances. The only thing that changes is they change when the hazards are going to come into play and how they behave, because that's the bit that you've got to be able to react to. Otherwise, I'd be expecting that car's going to pull out and then it's going to stop in front of me. So they have to change that little aspect of it. Otherwise, I know that something's coming, therefore my reaction won't be genuine. And so we ran the second drive, same conditions otherwise, and my reaction time was dreadful. in comparison. I knew it was bad was I started live streaming. It was basically I just put the camera on and did record. It wasn't a live stream broadcast on Periscope at the time,
right.
Which would have been quite peculiar to say live streaming and driving, but I'm not driving. But
yeah.
So I didn't have comments to react to, but I simulated the fact that I was looking at the screen and trying to read the comments. I was all over the lane. I couldn't keep it in the right place. My speed was up and down, and my reaction times in some cases doubled. And the Professor Nick Reed, who's one of the project directors there, afterwards when we had a debrief, said that the reaction time increase is the difference between not having an accident and having an injury accident, or having a fatal accident or a serious injury accident. Those are the real stark consequences of it. And it was trying to, this is what it's about, bringing that home to people.
Indeed, in terms of bringing it home to people, you had also contact with your colleagues in the USA.
Yes, I mean, that's the beauty of social media, is that I've got friends in California and police officers in California, and also a number of colleagues in Toronto who have all been supportive of it. It's been a lot harder to get US and Canadian police forces and agencies to sign up, but I can understand that because it's sort of driven from the UK, and it's, if I'm going to struggle to get UK forces on board, well, then it's going to be even harder to get some of the American and Canadian ones on board. But the individual officer accounts have been superb, and that's building up those relationships, and you soon realise how small this world is, really.
Yeah, true. Because it's 20 to 4 here, it's 20 to 8 with Bob, and we have quite a few people in from the USA watching today. And if you want to help promote this, you can still tweet out DontStreamandDrive. You'll find, if you search for the tag on Twitter, you'll definitely find it today. And then just retweet one of the tweets that you see there, and that will be helping the cause. I know that, yes, you're born in the USA. I know that we're all on the same page, and it's unlikely that we would consciously stream and drive. But you've had, as you said earlier, you've actually seen people doing it, and
oh, yeah.
you've contacted them, not whilst they were doing it though.
No. One of the things that I sort of set myself out for was, I thought, well, if it's dangerous and people are being distracted while they're driving, and the interactivity that platforms like Periscope offer means that they're reading the comments and looking at the screen while they're driving. And what I don't want to do is put my message in there trying to point out the dangers that they then look at and read and then have the crash. Yeah. So I've steered away from that. In most cases, not all, but in most cases, the username on Periscope matches the username on Twitter. So just a quick check to make sure it's the same person. Often there's a tweet from that account saying I'm live on Periscope. At which point I will then send them a message on Twitter and just say, do you understand how dangerous it is? Send them links to some of the short videos I've done, or articles about, the BBC News article on my blog or whatever it happens to be. And even to the point of encouraging them to sign up. In some particular cases, what I've done is I've actually gone on to Periscope and broadcast and done a personal broadcast to that person and tagged them into the title and said, I want you, basically saying, I'm just talking to them on Periscope and just saying, I want you to go back and have a look at your broadcast and just have a look how long your eyes are off the road and think about how dangerous that might be, and the fact that I'm sure they have friends and family that care about them, and what would they think if something happened. They say, well, this is my daughter, and she's normally so sensible, and she's just got a new job and loves her car, and I don't understand why she would do this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great line from the that I sort of, I've not used it a great deal, but it's a great line from an account that's in the States, which I think is a website, DontStreamandDrive. Okay. And they say, don't break hearts to make hearts. Yes. And it fits the bill, so.
Because it only takes a second or two of not concentrating on what's in front of you on the road, and you've caused an accident, and not only can you hurt yourself, but you can hurt everybody that was involved in the accident.
Absolutely.
Right. If everyone else has questions, then you. Oh, right. Okay. Thank you for the link, Leland. Leland's popped the link in there, which is good. And Leland is now co-host. Right. Okay. Next question I have is, what's next?
For me,
for the campaign.
Oh, for the campaign. For the campaign, what's next? Well, for the rest of the day, I'll continue to push the hashtag. I'll be all over Twitter. I'll probably on Periscope again later on. I will probably try and get back into Blab later as well and do a bit more on Blab later on. And just keep pushing the message for today. From here, then, I mean, I've got a media opportunity on Monday, which looks like it's going to happen. And who knows what else might come from that in the future as more and more people get interested. If it gets something that attracts the attention of the television broadcasters, who knows? Well, might something come from that. But I've tweeted out a little short while ago that I actually caught myself thinking, right, what can I do better next year? So there's already that thought that it has to go again, and I just need to manage that, you know, as an individual, but also with consideration to my employer to make sure that they're comfortable with everything that's going ahead. So because I think it's taken me, and I think it's taken them a little by surprise as to how successful it's become.
Indeed, it has become. You've gone from an idea to what must be up to 1,000 messages going out on Facebook and Twitter today, all about Don't Stream and Drive. So you've created a meme, which will carry on forward from today. And because we have a global audience on Blab, it gives us the opportunity to say, right, okay, if you've got any idea, how can people help you? Looking at Stream and Drive 2, Don't Stream and Drive 2. Right, we've lost your sound, Neil. Remove. If you're having trouble sharing, remove. It is, yeah. The signal. Can you see me, Leland? Thank you for joining us on the Don't Stream and Drive Blab today. It's been a pleasure to talk to Neil and to have you all watching. Don't Stream and Drive will continue for the rest of the day, and there will be another Don't Stream and Drive next year, the second one, and we can all take part in helping with that. Now, the whole point of the exercise is this, that if you're driving a car, you should not be using Periscope, you should not be using Meerkat, you should not be using Blab, and basically, don't distract yourself if you can avoid it when you're driving. So thank you for everybody who's watched us today and taken part. This is Stephen from Wiltshire in the UK saying thank you, and we're just waiting for the link to be posted in. But I thank you greatly for joining us today. It's been a pleasure with Neil and with Jon earlier. Jon was on because we've been going over nearly 6 hours now. Jon was on earlier today. And it's been a team effort with Stephen helping out and with Peter as well. So take care, everyone. Drive safely and look forward to seeing you on the next Blab.